Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight we'll be discussing the status of the Kigali City Master Plan thus far, and some of the issues we'll be discussing this evening pertain to, amongst others, construction permits, zoning, and regular and profitable use of the car-free zone. I am joined here on The Square by our guest for this evening, Engineer Fred Mugisha from the city of Kigali. Engineer.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. As always, the Square is also made up of 4 resident panelists, and with us this evening, Barna Namata.
Thank you for having me.
And Charles Haba.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
Good.
Yes.
Ephraim is also part of the Square, but he was unfortunately unable to be with us this evening. But he'll be joining us via social media and just generally in spirit. But as we always do the review of the week that we do here on the Square, before we take a deep dive into today's topic, what we usually do in the Square is just a recap of the week that has been. From my panelists, I'd like to start with you, Berna or Charles. How was your week thus far? And what are some of the things that caught your eye?
I enjoyed the weekend, personally, because I attended the Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend, which was focused on public sector in Africa. And the discussions there were quite interesting. Of course, the biggest highlight, I think, of the Governance Week was a conversation with His Excellency, the conversation between Mo Ibrahim himself and His Excellency, which was quite interesting. It should be on YouTube, but if it's not, I'm sure whoever didn't follow it should look it up. It was quite an interesting one. And beyond that, I think issues around how to fix the African public sector, I think the discussions were quite timely and quite relevant. So for me, that was really it. Yeah. And
you, Charles?
Something not directly related to what we are discussing today, but it's been bothering me. And I must excuse myself to our viewers that I have a bit of a sore throat. Mother Nature. We're having a lot of floods today. It's not unique to Kigali and Rwanda. It's a regional problem. I was in Nairobi last week, and you literally need a boat to move around some parts of the country. And Rwanda is not spared. I was reading in the papers today that we have the floods and slides have claimed more than 100 lives across the country so far, and that's something to be extremely worried about. And when Mother Nature, when you interfere with the course of a river or build on a slope and things like that, water has to find its way somehow. But it's pathetic. Yes.
Very sobering, coming from you, Charles. So that's the recap for the week. But tonight we are here to discuss a review, actually, of the Kigali City Master Plan thus far. And Engineer, thank you for honoring us. And I'll start with the first question. As always, my fellow panelists will follow up with their own questions. The city of Kigali always treads a fine balance between implementing the very ambitious Kigali Master Plan and also listening to the concerns of its constituents. And that said, what I'd like to ask you is the whole concept of zoning, specifically residential and commercial zoning. In 2017, early last year, businesses that were operating in residential areas were given 3 months to relocate. They were told it was too soon. The city of Kigali heard their concerns, extended the deadline, and most of these businesses in residential areas moved to commercial areas. But then, this year as well, and you'll correct us where we've erred maybe in getting this information, but there was a switch between these places that were told residential vis-a-vis being commercial, specifically around this lower convention, the conventional building area. So what's happening, and the businesses are being affected, and how do you explain this, Engineer Fred?
Okay, thank you. Maybe before I go to the zoning plan, let me first clarify about the city master plan itself. Because we have various plans according to the city master plan. We have a so-called concept plan that actually shows the long-term vision of the city in 100 years time to come. And beside that, we have a detailed master plan that shows us, that translates the other concept master plan into maybe a short-term vision. Then comes out the zoning plan.
that regulates the development in the entire area, that shows actually what the usage of the entire parcel land, what is actually the building height, what should be there. It clarifies the type of uses that is allowed in the very zone. It actually gives you the protection of your property from the incompatible uses. So now, in the zoning, as I mentioned, that clarifies where to put what, we have to obey with the rules and regulations. So recently, I think we have initiated a program to relocate people from non-complying zone to complying zones, especially people who was actually using the building as a residential. Then they relocated from residential to commercials. So this was actually the part of implementing the city master plan. If you look at the lower side you are mentioning about Chimihurura side, the majority of residential areas was occupied by the commercials, actually non-complying uses. The type of building that was constructed to host residential is now hosting commercials, which is totally illegal. Well, and we are forcing people actually to comply with the city master plan. People are constructing some offices, and at the end of the day, getting occupation permit, they are now empty. Then we try to verify what's the causes of the non-occupancy rate for these houses that are already constructed, that are already complying with the master plan. Then we found out that some people are actually occupying residential zones instead of occupying the commercial zones, maybe offices. So we said it's not fair, actually, for some building that is actually initially residential to be hosting an office, yet a building that is complying with an office is an empty. It's totally unfair. And beside that one, if you look at the housing study we did, we counted actually those buildings that was now occupied by offices to be in our data for residential areas. If I give you some facts and figures, in 2012, we did a housing study, actually to see the demand and housing supply when it matches. Then we tried to, together with the European Union, and they actually said the study done by European Union, and together with Rwanda Housing and the Ministry of Finance, it shows us that there's the buildings that are already in good conditions, because we wanted to see, well, we have the city master plan, we have the demand for population that is coming in front, there and there, the population density is high. Then we say, okay, what are the minimum units do we need in maybe next year's time to come? And what is the existing situation today? Now, if you look at the existing situation, the study shows us that at least we have more than 100,000 units that is in good condition. Those that is in good condition, they counted even those that already occupies the offices. For us in our papers, we already knew that these houses that is in good condition is a residential. Yet it's not a residential in practice. Then we say, okay, even though it's 100 units that is in good condition, well, that is not going to be replaced, that is not going to be upgradable. Then we said, okay, this data is good for us to plan in the future demand. Then if you look backward and say, okay, let's now see this building that is in existing condition, are they occupying actually the residential? Then we found out that it's not. Even a majority of the houses that is initially to be residential was occupied by offices. And the offices that is complying with the city master plan is empty. So we say you have to shift from to comply with the rules and regulations.
And I'll let my colleagues weigh in after this. But do you think maybe there's an issue, and again, this is what the comments we're getting from our Twitter, and I will go to it later on in the show. Do you think maybe there's an issue that in implementing the Kigali master plan, these residential versus commercial areas, and the way we also built a lot of these commercial buildings, the sky rises you see around town, maybe it didn't happen in tandem. And that's why you have an issue whereby there are a lot of empty buildings because there was this sort of miscoordination between how these buildings were built and a lot of people were already in residential areas. Was there a disconnect somewhere?
No,
do you think?
I don't think so. The way the city master plan is actually built is mixed-use developments. We don't want actually people to relocate from Chimihurura, one area, toward the CBD. actually we are shortening the travel. Right? So the way the master plan is built, each area, it is actually hosts different type of usages. We don't have an isolation of only residentials. We have actually the mixed users, because if we say, okay, there are some people who says, well, you are relocating us from Nyarutarama to CBD. No, it's not correct. We are not actually telling you to go to the CBD, no. We are telling you to go to the area that complies with the city master plan. Either maybe in Nyarutarama itself, there's a building that is actually complying with the city master plan, that has offices. Please shift and go there. And let people who want residential to rent and come in through these residential areas.
But I think I can relate with what Diana is saying. You see, around 2000, and it was after the Kigali City Master Plan had been conceptualized, and then eventually the zoning guidelines done. I think it was around 2013, 2014, thereabouts. It was allowed and relatively easy for you to go with your residential property to Kigali City and apply for a change of usage.
Around 2011?
No, around 2013, 2014.
2013.
Now, you'd get a change of usage for your residential property to comply to be used as an office. And there would be guidelines. They would say, are there parkings? They come and do an inspection. Do you have ladies' washrooms and gents' washrooms, and so on and so forth. What's the capacity of your septic tank? If the house is built for 4 people and your office is going to occupy 20 people, they would look at all those things. And if you tick the boxes, you'd get an official communication from the city of Kigali that you can go ahead and have your offices there. And that's exactly where the dilemma is. Because the same city of Kigali that allowed people to operate out of these residential properties is the same city that has come back to say, no, we've changed our minds. You should not be, our authorization is now null and void. And that is where I think the dilemma is. But Fred has explained it extremely well. And he's even though he's a good technocrat, he's a politician in his right. he has explained it well, that at the time, and it's actually true, that at the time when they were giving all these approvals, the supply of office space was very low. Today, the case is different. The supply of office buildings has increased, and therefore there is no reason to continue allowing people change of usage to allow them work out of residential properties. And to a certain extent, I think it's a fair comment. And sometimes you also have to look at it from a supply perspective. We still have a huge shortage in supply of high-end residential properties. And literally all...
Wait, let me just get you very quickly. Just recount what you said, rephrase
Yes.
what you said. In Kigali, there is a shortage of
yes.
high-end residential properties.
Correct.
A shortage?
Yes, there is a shortage.
It's something we're going to discuss later.
No.
I personally think there's
I run a
an
property
excess.
practice.
Of course you know better.
I run a
but-
property practice, and I'll tell you, for instance, how we struggle so much
Really?
to find ambassadorial homes, for instance. Of course, this has been worsened by the fact that there was a Prime Minister's order recently, a Prime Minister's letter that came in to say government officials, policemen, and soldiers are not allowed to rent their properties to either government itself or the diplomatic world. That created also a very big gap. So the gap was already there, and then it was widened by the fact that some people are not allowed to be landlords.
Especially in civil service and the military.
Yes. So the gap is there. Now, the gap, some of these top diplomats would not, for instance, prefer to live in housing estates for security reasons or others. So, and then the other option that they have is properties that are either used as restaurants or offices or kindergartens or and so on and so forth, clinics and what have you. So, to an extent, I agree with the position of the city of Kigali. My issue really is that some of these things are not supposed to be haphazard. You know, there's planning that goes through this. You're talking about the example you gave of the Chimihura area is a fantastic example. But if you're to stretch also to the Kachiru area, you know, it takes a lot of money to convert a property that has been previously residential into a commercial building. And landlords only make that business risk after they have gotten approvals from the city of Kigali. So for you to come and pull the rug under my feet and say, no, the other permission that I gave you is no longer valid, I have changed my mind, you have to go this route. And that's where exactly where it is unfair. Yes.
Let me clarify that. Well, I appreciate that you know all these things. But the way we relocate these people from residential to commercial offices, it's actually case by case. There are some people who have received the change of use permit. And today, it's hard to transform his offices that is currently occupying into a residential that is complying with the city master plan. Those people who have construction permits previously that allows them to construct an offices, that allows them to transform their existing residential into an office because he has already invested much into transformation. So we are no longer relocating those people because they have a permit from the same city, as you mentioned. But
just repeat that again.
Let me repeat it.
Yes.
Those people who have the change of use permit and construction permit, to be specific.
Change of use.
There's a change of use because previous in 2010, it was used as a residential. Then you said, well, according to the market outside, I don't see any income from my house. This is your property. You are free to transform for what you want as long as you are complying with the city regulations. That's why it comes to request. If you request for a change of use permit, then the city goes to the site and visit and found you are fulfilling all the criteria to occupy your house as an office.
Which is what Charles was saying earlier.
Yes. We give you a green light. But today, the same people who have already received a permit from the city is no longer being relocated because it has a change of use. But the majority of these people who have already occupying offices are illegal. They don't have the change of use permit. Those that have the change of use permit, we are no longer it's untouchable.
Well, that's really breaking news because I think maybe about a month ago, there was a blanket letter that was sent to everybody who occupied offices.
Yes.
And it was actually a very militant letter that was written by the former mayor. And it gave people 7 days.
So you must have celebrated.
No.
And remember, we communicated this in 2015, and we implemented in 2017.
No, but
that's a 2 years grace period, by the way.
No, it is not. It's not a 1 year's grace period, Fred, because remember that these people have permits, as you have said, for change of usage, or they've been given. I know some they would differ. Some of them would be 1 year. Some of them would be, depending on the kind of organizations. Some of them have gone to the extent of, on the basis of the change of use letter, gone ahead to take bank loans to acquire that property. So I am glad that you're saying that my interpretation is that that the letter that your former boss wrote should be ignored. That it is null and void. The letter to vacate those properties.
If you have change of use permits, you're untouchable.
Well, you're untouchable.
Actually, we circulated all those letters to everybody,
irrespective of whether they had change of use
or not.
Or not.
Then it's up to you to show us, the city, this is what you have given me in 2012. Why are you requesting me to relocate today? You said, wow, this is not your case. Just you are removing out of the list.
I think, Bana, just
Bana,
before you come
in,
I sense a bit of laziness in the administration of the city of Kigali there. Because they should have known better that they have already allowed these people to change their properties from residential to commercial. as opposed to treating everybody in one and the same way. But anyway, Bana.
Let me come in as someone with a lot of interest in this, because being real estate, you may have so some interest. I would like to take you back on how you introduced the master plan as mixed use. In my view, I think the master plan is perfect on paper.
True, you're right.
Yeah,
not on
but
paper.
On paper, and I will explain why. If you look at our city today, the reality is different, and I'll tell you why. One, we have an oversupply, in my view, of office space compared to affordable accommodation. That's one. Two, you've just explained to us that the master plan should accommodate everyone. You don't want people to move. You want a combination of residential, office, and all these facilities. But I'll ask you, if you talk to anybody and say Nyarutarama, for instance, what do people know Nyarutarama for? That's one. If you tell someone you live in Nyamirambo, what is the impression? Are they part of the same master plan or not?
Well, if you'll see the perception of people today about how, if you said the Nyamirambo area, where according to today's perception, to your perception or someone's perception who's living there, is actually going to be totally different to what master plan says. This is actually the perception of people's behavior.
What do you mean perception?
It's a perception.
I mean, people live in Nyamirambo and others live in Nyarutarama.
As I mentioned, in a paper, in Nyarutarama, even though we say Nyarutarama is high-end villas, but well, it is indeed. But yet it is high-end villas, as Child says.
But the master plan, according to the master plan, it should be mixed.
It is high-end villa as well, but it's mixed already.
Yes.
Because one side is one-end villa and another side is...
I think
it's a commercial and in other zones.
If I can rephrase what Brenna is saying, is the Kigali master plan, and this is a very loaded question that she's asking, is it meant for everyone in Kigali?
Very.
The development of the city, does it apply from Nyamirambo to
If we have, let me just...
based on people's perceptions.
I am going to be on Fred's side on this one to probably elaborate.
Brenna, did I get you right?
It's the Kigali City Master Plan is actually a very, very inclusive plan.
On paper?
No, even in reality. Even in reality. And I will tell you, for instance.
On paper, yes, because I know that there are people who live in Nyamirambo, living in different houses from those who live in Nyarutarama. There are certain houses that are in Nyamirambo that you cannot find in Nyarutarama, except slums. So if it's mixed plan, I need you to explain to me how, for instance, you can have an oversupply of office space and you don't have an oversupply of affordable housing in the same master plan.
No. That one, I think the economic forces follow a very, very simple rule. Supply usually relates with demand. And because, again, to let Fred off the hook a little bit here, it is not his business to build for either a certain caliber of people who can afford offices that are cheap or for people who can afford houses that are cheap. As a private player, if you see that there is need for beans in the Eastern Province, you will go and supply beans in the Eastern Province.
Can I come in there?
No. His role is to plan. And then once he's basically providing a platform and enabling environment.
It's to plan and authorize.
Exactly.
And authorize.
That's
a key thing that I think you're leaving out of
when
your
it comes to the supply, the actual building, it is either the private developers or another government institution that is responsible for the delivery. It is not the urban planner's job to deliver the final product.
But there are also urban planners
But
and
look,
authorizers.
we are talking about, Charles, let me clarify what I mean, yeah? We are talking about Kigali City that issues permits, okay? We are saying they have the right, when they are allocating permits, to say, since we in view of the master plan, it's supposed to be mixed use, even in terms of the people who live there, it should be mixed, you know, rich and poor. Yeah? Since they are the ones who give people permission, if an investor comes to you with a real estate project, we expect that Kigali City will advise them and say, by the way, we need affordable housing around this place.
But
if
yes, you can, Fred.
Fred,
But let me
please
just
chip in.
inform Bana that what you're saying is actually the case. That is why
The
there
case
are
that we
zoning.
don't see.
We have zoning guidelines. But anyway, let me leave
Let's let Fred,
the master of
concerns.
zoning to talk about the zoning. And I think that's really where the crux of the matter
Actually,
is. But yes.
the master plan itself is a vision, is a regulation, it's a policy. The buildings that we see all around is a product of these visions and these policies.
Absolutely.
So what we do in a master plan is actually we play a platform where to put what in terms of actually inclusive city. Then when it comes into implementation, that's where you are now, where you want to tackle. The city master plan is not implemented the whole. We are implementing it in phases.
Absolutely.
What we are planning in CBD as a phase 1, in the city center as phase 1, it's already planned in Nyamirambo, yet it may be in the second phase. You understand me?
Why would it come in the second phase?
Well, if you wanted the first phase, we are not going to ignore your proposal. But what we are focusing is, because the city plan is not ending processes.
But you see, going back to the issue that you raised of inclusiveness.
Yes.
So we expect that if it is phase 1,
Let
there
me
should be
give you one example.
Give me an element of inclusivity
let me
in
give
phase
you one
1.
example.
Yes.
Let's focus on phase 1, where the phase 1 master plan is actually specific focusing in the CBD, in the city center. That's actually where we want to see whether we are implementing the city master plan on the desired target or not. But if you have a plot that is allowed commercial offices in Nyamirambo, and you want to develop it today, yet my master plan phase is actually focusing in phase 1, I'm not going to ignore your application. Yes, we say, okay, please do. Make it commercial offices. It depends actually on your demand. Let me give you one thing here. As Charles says, the city doesn't have its own land. The land is owned by the citizen itself. It's you who have to comply with what you have already planned. But depending actually on the analysis we did during the planning processes, we said, okay, since we want the city of the vision of the city is actually to be the center of excellence in Africa, and we set different goals. One of the first goals is actually to have the city of Calcutta and a vibrant economy.
Please say that again.
A city of Calcutta and a vibrant economy.
What does that mean?
Character and vibrant economy.
Well,
and
we want actually
it has
to
personality, so to speak.
have actually the destination hub in the commercial hub in Africa. What does it mean?
That's a CBD?
Yes.
Or the
CBD
Kigali City in general?
It's Kigali City in general, because we are creating different employment nodes around the regional centers of the city. Then if we say, okay, if we want actually this goal to help us to be a vision, to reach our vision, and creating the Calcutta vibrant economy, then we have to create enough spaces for offices. We have commercial offices, commercial spaces. Then where? All over the region of the city. Now we say, okay, this first, because we are not going to focus all over 730 square kilometers of the city, but let's first have a small scale of the city to see whether what you are planning is actually feasible.
And
if not,
and scalable.
Yes, I'm scalable. If not, that's how you have a room of updating the city master plan every 5 years to actually match the vision.
I can relate with that, because even beyond that, there is the infrastructure demands and infrastructure challenges. You can't roll it out everywhere as you want, because even though we said that the implementation of the master plan is largely up to the private developers who own the land, but the infrastructure is the responsibility of the city and the other partners. So I imagine they don't have pockets as deep as they would, as everyone would prefer. So then therefore they roll it out in phases. So it is understandable. Bana, if you have 10,000 francs to spend on lunch every day, you can go to Radisson. And that
Charles,
is where your lunch is.
Can we hold that thought?
If you have
and discuss it when we come back from the break with your examples of the Radisson. But
Yes.
Brenna,
I don't
very,
have
very loaded question that you asked in terms of perception, and I don't think it's easy to answer. But for sure, that is a perception I think that many share in terms of different
Because
locations.
that's what they see.
That's what they see, you know. But anyway, we'll be back after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about the Kigali City Master Plan. We'll be back after a few minutes.
Many people have been asking what we have been up to. Well, we have told the different stories from decision makers, but this time round it will be different. We will be getting head to head with various influencers and get to the heart of the matter. It is not an easy ride, but we'll endeavor to get you there. It will be insightful, informative, and at times we will agree to disagree because we are the bridge to your leaders.
Welcome back to the Square. Tonight we're reviewing the Kigali City Master Plan, and we are joined here by Engineer Fred Mugisha from the city of Kigali. So, before we go into our Twitter feed and listen to you, our audience, dear audience members, on some of your very valid points on the Kigali City Master Plan in 2018, I would still like us to discuss a couple of issues that we plan to discuss this evening. And this is to do with construction permits. I'm sure some of you have seen construction happening in different parts of the city, but this is to do with construction permits. And my question to you, Fred, is there a lack of coordination? Because there's some buildings you find that are more or less almost completed, and then they're given instructions to either halt operations and add a few elements, for instance, maybe add a few floors, or worst case scenario, they're temporarily suspended. So I don't know if there's a lack of institutional coordination between the city of Kigali and other line institution, but the person, by the time he or she builds their property to a certain degree, how does it come through that they were told their construction permit and the way they obtained it was problematic? Is my question clear to you?
I want to build onto that because issuance of construction permits is one of the indicators of the doing business
which we discussed
ranking
last week here with the RDB.
Now, RDB is very, very good at sugarcoating these reforms. And I was a bit disappointed that I wasn't in the country to be at the show last week to be able to put them to task on this.
We'll invite them again.
So we are very good at beating the rules. You know, if World Bank says move from 30 days to 20 days, it will move you the ranking by half. Make sure you say that you will do it in less than 30 days. Whether you do it is a different story. But World Bank will just come to tick the box, and then you move up the ranking. The construction permit process today, Fred, leaves a lot to be desired. Seeing is one thing, doing is a totally different thing. Directly related to that is the process of getting occupation permits, and which is actually partly what Diana was saying. You know, they tell you to do this, you submit your drawing permits, your detailed drawings, you get your construction permit, you go to site.
You actually erect your building, more or less, it's halfway done to a certain degree.
The building is ready. When it comes for the inspection, as per the plans, you're told, no, the fire suppression system you're using is not the one the National Police Department requires. It helps a lot today that when they are coming to do the inspection to get the occupation permit, it helps a lot that all the teams are there, the health guys, the police guys, and the city of Kigali, everyone else is there. But it does not help that you surprise landlords with specific requirements on, say, a hose pipe or a specific fire hydrant. Sometimes it makes people feel that you people in the city and the other people you work with, you connive with suppliers of specific equipment so that it is the equipment that is specified. All because it was not transparent from the beginning. Yes, and then
you should clarify that.
I think I need to clarify that. But back to the issue, let me just emphasize the point on construction permits, and please combine that with the one on occupation permits. I think there is a serious gap in the approval department. I think I don't know whether you have enough engineers to be able to read some of these complex designs and what have you, but the process is taking a lot longer these days, especially for complicated mixed-use developments. Yeah.
Fred, would you like to answer that?
Let me start with actually the procedures for construction permits. Every building, according to the law, should obtain a construction permit. And now building codes, we have actually the requirements for any category of building to get a construction permit. Well, we try to find out that before they log in application to the city of Kigali, there are a lot of procedures that is very complicated. We as the city and the government in large, we try to facilitate the environment before even apply to the city of Kigali. The World Bank people, the DB team, who came and assessed an indicator for construction permits, they said it takes 15 procedures to get a construction permit. If we are easing at doing business in your country, that's too much. Well, of course, we like advisors. So we said, where is this procedure that is very complicated? We find actually some are in our building codes, which was actually very tough. And I can mention why it was very tough. Because we approved this building in 2015. Actually, we didn't have the law governing the Institute of Architects and Institute of Engineers. Since they were not reliable and there was no rules and regulation governing them, so we tried to make it a bit hard, but not harder per se, but at least to improve the quality. Then from that time, we said, now, let's try to ease the procedures before these people come in the city to get a construction permit. There are various procedures we took off. For example, I'm not sure whether if you know the environment of the city in 2013 in the issue of construction permit and today's environment, they are totally very different.
That's true. That's true. And
we are progressing and we are coming.
Give credit where it's due. Yes, there is progress.
And maybe for the coordination you're saying, because it happens actually, and it used to happen in previous years that the city is authorizing a permit and another institution that is related comes and says, please, there's one case, I guess this is the case you're mentioning. But nowadays, we rectified all these issues. And we said every institution that is actually have any relationship with lands and buildings should have a focal person in the permitting department.
So you're aware of the issue and you're actually actively
we rectified it already.
Rectifying it.
Yes, just miscoordination between different institutions. That's what we rectified it. Yeah?
Okay.
But what we do is actually we are on side of the client because the client is a king. Yeah? We cannot actually say, please demolish your house because the city have given you a permit. Another institution can come in and say what you are doing is not according to our institution rules. So what we do, the client the investor over there cannot actually get lost. No.
Speaking of clients, before we go to our Twitter feed, there are a couple of tweets that we need to definitely read.
I wanted to go to the...
We have a few minutes left, but we'll come back to that. But speaking on this in terms of clients and everything, the car-free zone. The car-free zone is something that people are really excited by. People are very involved in. Very many people, Charles. I'm telling you, myself included. The car-free zone. It's been 3 years. It's actually going to be 4 years later on this year. What is the city of Kigali, I'm sure, and other line institutions, partner institutions, doing to make it a bit more profitable and exciting? Because some of these events that happen are usually around big events that happen around the car-free zone, whether it's the silent disco, whether it's the marathon, whether it's... But just on a regular weekend or during a week when there's nothing major happening in the country, such as these big events that we've been having, the car-free zone is... You know, it's been called, it's very quiet. It's very quiet. I know there are businesses, I was there a couple of days ago, there are businesses on the streets that sell arts and curios, but this vision that a lot of people had and were very excited about, the car-free zone is something where you'd see restaurants, you know, there are no cars, so the idea was to have a lot of restaurants and entertainment activities, a hub of culture and entertainment in the city. It's very quiet.
Let me talk about the car-free zone.
No, let Charles, please, let him answer. Because we're short of time.
Yes.
I have to moderate it. Yeah. We're short of time and we have to go to Twitter.
Yes.
I want, from the horse's mouth, from the mayor's office, from the city of Kigali, please tell us what's happening with the car-free zone.
Why did you murder that street?
Let me actually...
Charles, don't be so extreme.
We have already said the city master plan is very ambitious.
Yes.
But for a few minutes before we go to our Twitter feeds. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Then... The part of actually pedestrianizing that street is a part of implementing the city master plan.
Of course.
I didn't actually go in detail. Maybe if you get time, you can go in detail about the city master plan. We have one goal of promoting a green transport. We have our city to be carbon efficient.
Which is brilliant.
Which is very brilliant.
So why did you give Makuza parking space?
But he has. Why?
Why did you give him parking space if you intended to pedestrianize that street?
But you have already pedestrianized the street, and he's already having a parking space. That's good.
You know,
that's good.
But carry on. What? My question, if you can really answer it, what are plans to make it vibrant?
Yes, that's where I'm heading. I just wanted to say we are implementing the city master plan. Okay. But the street we have today is not what we are planning.
Okay. Really?
Well, yes.
So that was an accidental car-free zone?
No. We have actually, how can you plan something, yet there's a lot of traffic over it? So we said, let's first implement the pioneer of the street to be an open, a vibrant street. It's 3 years without having anything that looks vibrant. Well, we are actually gathering some meeting over there, some sports. It's not enough. This is actually the thing. People are actually going there and meditating, resting, try to do sports, either they create passively and actively. But it's not what is actually the focus of that entire street.
Is it? What's the focus of that street?
Now, what we want through that street, we want actually to provide actually some amenities that is more friendly for pedestrians and cycling.
Like?
Well, if you look at even the pavement today, it's not friendly for pedestrians. We try to spend all this couple of years actually trying to assess what does people want. How can we implement something that is not going to be a headache to retailers that have access to this street? How can we actually advise you as a client? Because we did a consultation to an individuals, a shop sellers, you as a client, so that we understand to have a comprehensive approach how are we going to implement the city.
I'm sure the feedback from the shoppers, from the retailers was bring back the cars.
Well, the minority actually.
But it's an attitude that we have to get used to.
It's the minority because the majority already closed and left.
No, I think it's an attitude that we have to get used to.
If you do such assessment, you say, please, this is what was before we close off. Let me say close off, but we are not closing off the road because the road is actually accessed by one mode of transport because we are actually limited to an emergency vehicles. This is something we are planning. Is it going to be beneficial for your businesses?
It better be.
Very. Okay, and you go to next door.
At least give us 2 examples of
Yes.
the activities.
Now, we said if we remove that pavement and we try to have a pavement that is very friendly with pedestrian, not only that one, we are putting some kind of facilities, for example, benches, some kind of aesthetics that is going to be attracting different pedestrians to come in the car-free zone today. Actually,
I think that try and error is costing this country a lot of money.
There's
of
no try and error, Charles.
Yeah, because you just, in your own words, you said we are trying to do this. We are trying to do this. So it's you're not certain about what you should be doing.
In planning, we want actually everybody to be contented about what we are going to do, because it's up to them who's going to benefit. If we are putting something that is not going to be beneficial to the citizens who is actually accessing that street, we're doing nothing, and we're planning for the people.
But that's what I said in the beginning. The city of Kigali, you really try to find balance, trying to implement a plan and also listen to
exactly the needs of society.
Yeah.
There's no fine balance there, Dan.
That's it. Let's beg to differ, but let's go to a Twitter feed. We have 10 minutes, and I want us to at least really go to our people on Twitter. So this is Twitter from Kefa Angwenyi. Kefa Angwenyi. This is a Twitter feed. On our Twitter feed, and he says, good one. So he has a couple of questions, and if we can just screen this this particular feed. So this is, he asks, any plan to do new research on Kigali housing needs?
True.
That's the first question. He says the previous one is now dated. And then he asks again, when is the central treatment plan expected to be operational? So one question, any plan to do new research on the Kigali housing needs?
Actually, that's why I'm saying the city master plan is not something that is very static, that is very over there, because demographies are changing day and day. The vision of the country is changing day and day.
Population
so you have
growth
to update to government vision and to existing
So when is this one up for review?
Now it's ongoing, actually. Because it already spent 5 years, you have to update it to actually
So
see.
Bana's Nyamirambo might change.
According to you, because the master plan is yours.
One of the things I'm looking for in the new master plan to change is this ridiculous requirement to have tiny plots of 300 square meters in high-end areas.
But
if I am rich enough to live on a large plot,
I wouldn't second it. It's not inclusive.
Yes.
Honestly, even the master plan that
what if that's what I can afford? Are you telling me I should get out?
No, in the high-end area.
Yes,
in the high-end
we should
area,
live together. We should live together.
If you can afford to live in a high-end area, then 300 square meters is too small for you.
I tell you what.
But you can, buy a lot
he
of
told
us.
Yes.
He told us that the master plan is inclusive.
Very.
So,
No,
if you're talking about inclusiveness and you're telling me you want to create a neighborhood that is entirely high-end, what is inclusive about it? Let's be honest.
Let me tell
There's
you.
nothing inclusive.
You look at our city, there are people who drive Range Rovers and other guys who ride on
No, but it
motors.
doesn't make it right.
Yeah, that's the nature of society.
No.
But at the same time,
Bernard,
before we get to that, at the same time, this is something that, like you said, you have phase 2, and in phase 2, these are things where your questions might be answered.
Absolutely,
But I want you to answer this tweet. You people, you drag back the conversation to Bernard's point. But Fred, if you can ask,
Central
if you can answer the central treatment.
Actually,
when is it expected
one
to be
of the
operational?
problems we have in the city is actually the sewage systems.
Yes, we're seated on a
I'm glad you agree.
sewage
Yeah, I
type.
agree.
Yes.
But actually, we're on the right track of actually having this sewage treatment plant. We are proposing it already. Studies have already started.
And we also have the money, actually, because it was signed earlier this
we
year.
can actually try to find the money earlier this year.
No, money is not a problem.
I saw a
I
big
know.
deal that was signed the other day.
Yes, so there's money.
From the EU.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
EU. So, well,
Where is it going to be?
It's going to be located in Gitinyoni. Do you know that?
Yes.
This is where it is located.
Timing?
Yeah.
It will depend on the capacity, Charles.
But it's urgent.
2 years, 3 years?
Well, if we get even some resources today, it's
Really?
so the money that
you have is not sufficient.
It's not sufficient.
Was it for studies? Was it for
the studies are already completed? The money want is for implementation. Can you imagine actually having the sewage system that is going to serve all the CBD? It's not something very
simple.
Very simple.
But
as long as we have ambitious plans to implement this STP.
And Fred, also another tweet that we're asking is, and a lot of people asking also, is how often is the Kigali city master plan reviewed?
Well,
and what's the review process? Are there stakeholders involved? Are you
very.
Private sector, businesses?
Taking an example of
How often is it
this
reviewed, and
master
what's
plan,
the process?
actually even 5 years, it's advisable to update the master plan because there are a lot of changes that happen in the
Isn't
country.
5 years to
I would recommend
I think
3
3
years.
years. Kigali is
Well,
growing exponentially
That's
so
why I'm
quickly.
saying the master plan is up to it's for you. During the preparation of the city master plan, what is already implementing today, we consult different stakeholders. So it's up to them who says maybe after years, let's see what happened. Now we're updating the city master plan through this consultation. We're going to have with you. So we are going to actually say, okay, now the vision of the country has changed to 2050, for example, and your master plan vision 2040. Why can't you shift to 10 years to 2050 to go in a government vision? That's the thing, actually, and we are involving different partners, even from low citizens to high levels. This is actually the participatory approach.
And based on that, when you say participatory approach, again, just before we sign off, we have a couple of minutes left, 3 minutes to be exact. But and I want my colleagues to weigh in on this as our final question. City of Kigali has been accused of not being consultative and has inadequate communication to its stakeholders based on various changes. What do you have to say to this?
What we are trying to do is actually trying to make the master plan more known to every citizen that lives in the city of Kigali.
That's very important because up to now I think it's your best kept secret.
No. We're publishing the city master plan online.
Yes.
Everybody, wherever you are in the world, you can access the city master plan.
But
the problem is,
but you need to do some more effort to actually push forward.
The onus
do
you know what we are doing? Let me just give you the ambitious plan.
Yes.
We are already finalizing. This master plan document is already in English. Well, English is actually an official language we are using in the country, but at least the majority understand Kinyarwanda. So we are trying to translate the master plan in each cell in Kinyarwanda so that every sector, the leader of that sector should have the booklet of the master plan of each cell so that people can be aware about the master plan.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And we try to create another environment where you can access the master plan on phones. Guys,
That's brilliant. Yes. So these plans
When are you
cannot
happy?
be kept. We need to know about
just
them.
put the phone and I show you how you can get to your master plan online.
Please.
Please.
We need to know.
By the way, we created other environments that we are all aware that people out there, they are no longer accessing the master plan.
Yes.
And maybe they are accessing it, but they don't know exactly how to translate these maps because the master plan is about maps.
Exactly.
To be
even your own colleagues at the district level, for instance.
So we normally advise if you don't understand actually how to read these maps online, you better visit the one-stop center.
But you really need a communication campaign for this amazing, ambitious
really agree.
master plan that we have for this city.
But during this update, we are going to do the same.
This is something we're going to
We agree that we have to communicate it through the local levels.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of the show. A few minutes left, but I just wanted to thank you. And one of the things, and before we break off, Charles, maybe you can correct me on this. We also wanted to talk about housing this evening, but housing and the Kigali City Master Plan, are these mutually exclusive issues? Is this something that the city of Kigali is also actively involved in terms of the housing issue in the country?
If I would say that we have a very big gap in housing, yet the master plan proposes where to put housing. The child who is actually in the real estate industry is aware about the problem in providing houses, because actually the housing topic is very big. If I look at what we need in maybe on a short time horizon for 10 years, we are actually needing to cater the demand of this inflow of population coming in the city, at least 300,000 and 34,000 units, more than that.
Yes.
And to provide that one, we need actually to produce daily 90 units daily. Can you understand that?
Wow.
Affordable units.
Affordable. The 54% of a building in the city of Kigali should be affordable.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Well, like I said,
we try to create some environment that we give incentives to the developers like Charles, who can actually try to develop affordable homes, because we want our citizens to remain in the city.
Absolutely.
And
to
in
own
conclusion,
a home, by that,
can I, with your permission, Dana, can I just say my conclusive remarks? I know you're about to crucify me.
Yes, I am.
I think one of the things I'd like to see the city doing is become more proactive. Talk to your people. It's the city master plan and everything around it should not be a secret. Tell us, engage us, people who live in the city, and it's also very, very important for you and your colleagues, the ones who live who work in the districts, to be exposed.
To
be exposed
so,
and
like
to know what the master plan
like
is.
We said, this is the Kigali City Master Plan. It's very in-depth. Next time, I think we need to take a deep dive into housing.
Please.
This is why I asked you, can you talk about them at the same time? And it's clear, it's obvious that you can't.
Yes.
So we've come to the end of the show. We've been talking about the Kigali City Master Plan. We are going to upload this on our YouTube page for those who missed tonight's show. And there's always a rebroadcast every Thursday at 2:30 p.m. on Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, Rwanda Television. Thank you for joining us, and have a very, very good evening.